Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
I am Geraldine McFaul. I live in Glasgow and I'm a freelance risk consultant. So I carry out fire security and safety surveys for insurers. I walked, as it turns out, 2,009 miles from home to Rome.
Oof. And we are going to be jumping into that to find out all about your amazing walk to Rome. But I'd just love to hear a little bit more, maybe about sort of life and growing up. You know, have you been into walking? Have you been into the outdoors? Is doing challenges like this something that you've done previously?
I have done previous walks before, but when I say that, I mean up to 300-mile walks. Yes, growing up, we went camping as a family, so I have been camping, but walking, I suppose I have done walking, and I have done a few more recent walks around Scotland. I walked with a friend of mine from Cardiff to London. We also then, a couple of years later, walked between the 7 cities of Scotland. So that was from the north of Scotland down to the centre. And both of those trips are 300 miles. I've also walked in Palestine and I've walked in Jordan and around Scotland, you know, done some of the Munros, some of the hills in Scotland, but nothing like this. I have been out walking, I have been camping, but nothing as big as this.
So what is it that you like about walking?
I am not a fit person. I'm never going to be a super fit person. So walking is a nice pace for me. And I realise that just getting out into the fresh air and seeing things, seeing the countryside and meeting people, doing it at a slow pace, which is the only pace that I could do really for anything, just getting out and about.
So let's talk a little bit more about your walk from your home in Glasgow to Rome. Where did this idea come from? Like, had you been dreaming about this for a long time?
Well, it was a long time, but the story behind it really is a bit bizarre because honestly, I was sitting in the living room and 2016 this was, and a thought came across my head. I wasn't particularly thinking, I don't remember particularly thinking about anything really, but I thought, I've never been to Rome. And the next thought was, one day I'll walk there. And honestly, that was it. Thought came across my head and it kind of didn't ever go away. It took me 2 years before I even told anybody about it, but that thought was there. One day I'll walk to Rome.
Why Rome?
Because I've never been there. Yes, so that was it. I probably could have gone to Rome, like I've done a lot of travelling at any time if I'd chosen to. It's just never happened. I guess for me as well, there's a connection with mum and dad. I have both been to Rome and had loved it. So I guess it was one of those places that I'd never been to, but one day I probably would go. But the idea of walking there, when it came to me and it wouldn't go away, I was like, right, okay, it's different. I'll do that. I really didn't think much more than that. But yeah, it's a place that I'd like to see.
I think it's really interesting because lots of people will have that initial idea. It's like, oh, you know, yeah, I'd like to walk there, or I'd like to do that challenge, or I'd like to do that adventure. And it's almost like a flame, like it flickers in and out, and then sometimes it can be extinguished, and then you forgot about. There's obviously something that you continue to think about, but it took you sort of 2 years to tell people. Who were the first people that you told? And why did you decide to share your dream at that point?
Oh, that's a good question. Funny enough, I don't remember who I told first. And I did ask a couple of friends recently, do you remember when I first talked about this? And they're both the types that would go out and do things. And they said, well, no, because probably when you told me, I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that? Because a lot of my friends, that's the kind of friends that I've got that will go out and do things. So their explanation really was that it is a big deal. It obviously was a big deal, but yeah, that's the kind of thing that why not? Why wouldn't you do it? So I don't know whether I've even answered that question, but I don't remember who I told first. And I think it took me a couple of years because it was such a stupid, crazy idea. And maybe I was just processing in my head as whether this was coming reality. The other thing was that 2016 was the year that Mum had been diagnosed with vascular dementia. So there was also that thing of, well, obviously I'm not going to be doing this now. I don't know when I'll do it, but one day I will. But it would be when Mum's still around, because I knew it would take me a long time, and I wouldn't want to go away for a long time.
Is your mum still around?
No, Mum died in April 2022, the day after my birthday. So yeah, so I went from 2016, and thankfully I got those extra 7, 8 years with Mum all through, well, through COVID when she was in a care home. But
Does doing this walk in some way as some way linked to your mum, or as a way of processing maybe your grief and dealing with your loss?
in hindsight, yes. Beforehand, it was just obviously I can't do it while Mum's here. In hindsight, absolutely. See, she died the day after my birthday, but well, actually, the night before her funeral, I then received my Ukrainian refugee family from Kiev to live in my house. Not perfect timing the night before my funeral, but I think it probably was Mum had a bit of a hand in, here you go, here's something to distract you, something to keep you busy. And yeah, again, in hindsight, it was tough at times, but it was good. It was a good distraction for me to then have Mum, Dad, and two young children living in my house for 5 months over that summer. And it was only when we were getting them settled into their own flat, and they're still in Glasgow. Thankfully, I still see them a lot. My friend said to me, now, this is your time. This is where you talked about this walk for long enough. Just make a commitment to yourself, put a date in the diary, and go on with your walk. So that's what I did.
I love those words that you just use, make a commitment to yourself. And actually now is your time. And sometimes I imagine that people can always feel like a little bit selfish for wanting, to have your time and make that commitment to yourself. So what did you do? How simple, easy was it to actually say, okay, yes, this is my time. I'm going to do this. And then what did that planning and preparation look like?
I'm laughing because planning and preparation wasn't a big factor in any of this. When Lucy said, just make a commitment, get your diary. I did. I just got the diary out. She was there, and she was saying, "I'll be able to come walking with you for a couple of days. I want to do that." So at the start, and literally, I opened the diary, and we chose May because we thought, well, the weather will be getting nicer, and hopefully it won't be too hot when I get through France and Italy. And it was a bank holiday at the beginning of May, and she could come along, and a couple of others have said they wanted to as well. So that was the date was basically booked by there's a bank holiday, and they could join me. It turns out that was the 6th of May was exactly a year to the day that we had buried Mum. That didn't occur to me for a couple of days after we had put the date in the diary, but so it was a bit surreal. But yeah, the planning, this conversation I think probably was around September of 2022, and I had done no planning other than a walk south and eventually I'll get to Rome. When I first thought of you might want to come back with this back to when I first described it. I had this thought in 2016, and before I spoke to anybody about it, I already had 2 rules for myself. One was I am not carrying a rucksack, and the other was I am not going over the Alps. I hadn't worked out how I was going to solve these two rules that I'd made, but I was sticking with them. So the first thing then was, how do I do this without a rucksack? And I had the idea of getting some sort of buggy, just a child's buggy that I was thinking I would push. And I thought, well, I'll get a second-hand buggy because it doesn't matter if a 3-year-old just trashed it as long as it's structurally sound. And I started to think and look for a buggy. I went to the Pram Centre in Glasgow with the idea of identifying the right buggy, but then going on to Facebook Marketplace or somewhere like that and buying it second-hand. I didn't find the right buggy until the end of the conversation that I had with the women in the shop, and said, the other thing I had thought about was maybe a trailer that people have on the back of their bikes. And she said, we don't normally have anything like that. She said, and it won't be second-hand anytime soon. But funnily enough, just last week, this new thing came in. Come, and I'll show you it. And we came around the corner, and there was a mannequin with a running kit on, with a trailer behind her, and a bar between her and the trailer, strapped around her waist. And I just knew that this was perfect. But it was extortionate, and it was brand new, so it wasn't going to be second-hand anytime soon. Came home that evening. This is now November. I've never bought anything on Black Friday before in my life. I've never really particularly been any interest in Black Friday. But I looked up the company with the idea of maybe contacting the company and seeing whether I could work with them in some way and borrow this thing. And when I looked up the name of the company, I saw Black Friday deal. And instead of £1,200, this thing was under £400.
Wow.
And I just have to do it because it was the right thing. It's the right size. I could strap it around my waist. When I was in the shop, I was standing behind it. I could see over the top of it because I'm so short that with some of the buggies I literally could see over the top of. So that was an important factor. And I just thought, I just have to do this now. Just getting it. It's more than I thought, but it's a heck of a lot less than it could be. And I bought it. So yeah, I had my no rucksack solved in November of 2022 accidentally.
And can I just clarify, so why didn't you want to wear a rucksack? Was that like a back issues, leg issues? Was there a specific reason?
Yeah, I just hate it. When I talked before about walking from Cardiff to London with my friend Erin, and that was a 300-mile walk. It was about 22, 23 days. Similar setup, while camping and whatever. By the end of those 300 miles, I remember that last day in London, I felt like I was almost on my knees. And I put it down to the weight of the rucksack, which I had tried to make as light as I possibly could. The walk around Scotland again, I've always done walks before like this with rucksack, and I just hate it, and it just weighs me down. I get out of puff really easily, so I guess that was just another factor. I just knew that if I was going to do this and it was mine and I wanted to do it, then I'm not doing it with a rucksack.
But I love that though, because you are, you're making your own rules, but you're doing what is right for you and your body and for your challenge. And actually, you've got this, problem, not a problem, but as in I don't want to wear it. It's like, how can I figure this out? And then I love the solution that you came up with. Did you already have all the gear and the equipment that you needed for this walk? So it was just a case of packing up the buggy and getting walking?
Well, as I say, I have camped before and I have walked before, but that summer, I did get some new shoes to try out to just make sure to sort of break them in. So I got some new walking shoes, and one of the other things with the trailer, once I had the trailer, I thought, well, I kind of figured that I wanted to be able to take the trailer into my tent with me. So I borrowed a friend's tent beforehand just to make sure that I could fit me and the trailer inside the tent. And then I actually bought myself that tent so that I knew. But actually on the 2009-mile walk, I think I took the trailer inside the tent twice. I just never bothered because I knew that I felt safe and I felt comfortable leaving it outside. It just meant I had more space. I have got, the waterproofs and waterproof trousers and the warm and the sort of sunny clothes and whatever, but I did buy some new stuff because A, I was treating myself, and B, I just knew that I was getting the right thing for this journey.
Did you have any other concerns or fears before you started out?
I don't think I let myself stop and think about it long enough to have them because I didn't even have a route. I literally was making it up as I was going along. Genuinely, I think there was an element of procrastination, and there probably was an element of just don't think about it because you'll worry yourself out of it. So I just didn't. Or maybe it was just naivety and stupidity that meant that I didn't do much thinking. But honestly, there wasn't a heck of a lot of planning went into this. I joined a couple of walking groups that had walked the Via Francigena, and that was when I discovered that there was a whole issue about potentially wild dogs in Europe. I don't do dogs, so that concerned me. And I bought a whistle, and that whistle went round my I thought I was going to chase off all these wild dogs with this whistle. So that was an element of safety. I bought a GPS tracker so that it's sort of it basically is sent to a satellite constantly. So every 10 minutes somebody could see where I was, and also if there was an emergency, there was an SOS button on it, and the local emergency services, I don't know the technology of it, but ultimately they could come and find me within a couple of meters of where I am. So I did go with an element of safety, but I didn't overthink it because it probably would have stopped me from doing it.
Were you working at that point? Were you retired? Did you need to take time off work? Did you have a holiday? How were you funding this in terms of those practicalities? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I had worked for a big company for almost 28 years, and I gave that up in 2000, towards the end of 2018. Nothing to do with this, nothing to do with anything really, just that I didn't burn out, but I just had enough and decided that I needed to leave this environment. And I had a couple of years, and I had planned that I had a couple of years without any real thought. And of course, the couple of years then ran into COVID. So it was 3 years without working, but then sort of 2021, I started to work freelance. So that's why I was able to have the flexibility. Still work for two companies, and I was able to phone them up and say, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to be available for 6 months because I'm going for a long walk. I fully appreciate the privilege of being freelance and having that flexibility. And that's sort of 2021 and onwards, especially after I had made the decision that I definitely was doing it. I then worked a heck of a lot more in order to back up my finances and to keep me going for the 6 months while I was away. So it was a privileged place to be in, but that was how I did it. I was freelance, it gave me the time, and I worked longer hours over that winter, just up to going away to finance it.
May the 6th, the memory of your mum's funeral, synchronicities coming into play, starting off on this epic journey. What was going through your head? Can you remember what you were thinking?
It was a bit fun, really, because friends were coming around to wave me off, and friends were coming to join me. My niece and my friends walked with me out that front door and off. For about half an hour, I remember half an hour before I left, my head was in the oven, cleaning the oven. I generally don't remember the last time I cleaned the oven before that, but for some reason it was important to clean the oven. I had house sitters coming to live in the house while I was away, so I guess that was my sudden thought. But once I was out the door and walking, I think it was just all a bit surreal and kind of calm, because even certainly within a few days, but possibly even at that point, I had no real thought of Rome. I was just going for a walk, and it was, most of us are able to go for a walk for the day. And all I was doing was joining one day onto the next, onto the next. So it was just about today, and it was just about where we're going. We're making the route up. As I say, obviously I knew that it was a year to the day that we had buried Mum. So the only decision I really made was that we were going to be walking down and through the cemetery, which is about 3 or 4 miles from my house, deliberately so that I could go and visit Mum and Dad at the cemetery before I went. And then we walked on from there to the Clyde walkway and carried on south. So it was good because I had company, and it was good just because this was it. I was starting, but I was excited, but I think I was kind of calm because I was just out for a walk.
Oh, I love that. I love going, going to visit your parents as well before setting off. Like that's a really nice sort of, like just a really nice thing to do, actually, just to be like, yep, bye. I'll see you. No, I'll see you soon. That sounds awful.
But yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I was going to be away for 6 months, but I think as well it was just to sort of connect them to it. Then I could imagine that Dad would, all the way through the journey, I was imagining Dad would be cheering me on, whereas Mum would have been ill with worry about it. She would have
Yeah.
hated every minute of me doing that walk. But yeah, so I guess I was just bringing them along with me, and I also asked them to look after me, which they certainly did.
So tell us more about sort of maybe like sort of the first sort of 500 miles after your friends left, you're sort of walking more by yourself, what did your days look like?
So I kind of fairly quickly got into a routine. The first couple of days I was staying with friends, but then I sort of was starting to camp, and although I didn't actually completely wild camp, I bailed out of that. Even in the first one, I thought I had found a pub that I could go to that had grounds, and I was thinking I could grass. And when I got to that first village, there was no pub. It wasn't even that the pub had been shut. There literally was no pub. It had been flattened. So I was kind of forced to think that I was going to have to do this proper wild camping. I carried on walking for a couple of miles and thinking, how do you find a field? There was plenty of fields, but how did I decide? And then I must admit, I did bail out because I spotted a house out in the countryside, in the middle of nowhere, and I tapped the door and I asked the man, do you mind if I camp behind your garage? I'm walking to Rome. And he just sort of said yes and shut the door, and I never saw him again in his garden, and it was beautiful. But that was me bailing out of the wild camping. So just from that point then, when I was camping, the routine really was getting up, I had a little jet boiled stove with me. So as long as I had tea bags and I had some porridge and biscuits, I was okay for breakfast. I'd pack up and literally look on Google Maps. Where can I get to today? How far will it be? On Google Maps, it gives you maybe 2 or 3 options, and it gives you the elevation. So often the elevation was my big factor. I'd happily do an extra mile if it meant it was a flatter route. And I was roughly thinking 10, 12 miles and seeing where that would get me to and make a decision and follow the road. Because I had the trailer, I had to stick to roads or where I absolutely knew that there was a cycle path or a footpath that I could go on. And even by that sort of day 3, 4, I'd had a horrible day of mud and footpath, and it was just ridiculous. So yeah, the routine was get up, have some breakfast in the tent, pack up, Google Maps, where am I going? And start heading off with the thought of can I stop somewhere to get something to eat? And second and third breakfast became a thing. I'm sure second and third breakfast was less about food and more about having a rest, and also talking to people. And then where am I getting to tonight? And is there somewhere that I can camp? And so I would often go to the village pub where there was a village pub, and I would ask them, is there somewhere that I could camp around here? And yeah, so I never knew in the morning where I was going, where I was going to end up, where I was going to eat, how I was sleeping tonight, and where I was sleeping tonight. And that was my routine.
How were you with that uncertainty?
I was fine because that was the reality. I had to be. That was just that was the routine. And as I say, it was day 4, that day that I bailed out of the wild camping and went to that man's door, and it worked. And I just sort of was going with the flow that's how I could do it. The next day, I actually had somebody in the cafe say, where are you sleeping tonight? And I ended up in her parents' spare room. So within 4 or 5 days, this ridiculous kidnapping and serendipity and people looking after me was already happening. And maybe that was what relaxed me and let me just go with the flow and see how it was getting on.
Tell me more about some of those magical moments as you were walking along. I mean, one of the things that you've sort of written is that you were constantly being kidnapped, but kidnapped with kindness. So, and people I think, or I've definitely experienced, the kindness of strangers while I've been out on my adventures. But I'd love for you to share maybe some of those, the magical moments that you look back on that really sort of stand out for you.
So kidnapped with kindness, and others that are listening to this will be aware of Anna McNuff. And I'll be honest, I've kind of pinched her word for that, which is kindnapping. And that has turned into the whole theme of this walk, right the way from Glasgow to Rome. I was kindnapped all the way along. People would stop me in the street because I'm walking with this trailer. What are you doing? Ridiculous. What, I did have, you can't do that. And I had to sort of almost put a bell jar over my head and say, that's their worry, not mine. Because if I stopped to worry about this, then I probably could say, I can't do this either. But apart from those worries that people had, everybody I met on that trip was kind. I said already that my routine of going to the village pub and asking if there's somewhere I could camp. Invariably, I would end up in a customer's back garden camping, or don't be so ridiculous. You're not camping out there. It's raining, or it's just mad. We've got a perfectly good spare room. You could come in and sleep in the spare room. They would feed me. I had a whole village kidnap me, where I didn't even get as far as the pub, where I had spoken to a woman walking her dog and asked her, is there somewhere around here that I could camp? And she told me very strongly that I had to camp in the village green, which is probably the last place I thought people would want you to camp. But she said, because we need to be able to look out for you. We need to be able to watch and make sure that you're safe. So I camped in the village green. And then once I had pitched my tent, I did go to the pub. And from that conversation with people in the pub, I ended up being invited the next morning to go into the house for a shower the next morning. And it was only when I went in to have a shower the next morning that they were explaining to me that the whole village WhatsApp group was going mad because everybody was fighting over who was going to bring me breakfast in the morning. Until they spotted me with my jet boil making my own porridge and realised I didn't need them to bring me breakfast. So that's just one example of where I was kidnapped by a whole village. But even in France, I phoned, and when I was in France one day, I phoned to try and book a bed and breakfast because I decided I wanted to, have a night of comfort. And that happened now and again in the UK as well. And she said, I'm sorry, we don't have anywhere, any availability tonight. And I said, well, on the phone, I said, well, is there somewhere that I could camp? And she was confused because she was thinking, well, you've just asked for a bed and breakfast, so why are you now asking about camping? Well, I ended up in their back garden camping. And also, the reason that the B&B was full was because her family were over from Switzerland. So I ended up in the back garden having a meal with her elderly parents who speak French, and the family from Switzerland who speak French and German. So there was 3-4 languages around the table, and I had a lovely evening. So the kidnapping just happened again and again. There was a little old man that I stopped. He was taking his shopping out of the boot of the car and into the house, and he asked me, saw Rome, and he was an elderly Italian man, and we had a Google Translate conversation, and I came away from that conversation with 3 big tomatoes from his garden and 2 bottles of Coke. So literally, big and small, I had kidnappers looking after me all the way through the journey.
Tell me about the Alps and crossing the Alps. How was that for you?
Well, back to my rules. I'm not carrying a rucksack. Solved. I am not going over the Alps. And that was because I'm thinking I am not a fit person. I don't like hills. I'm too slow. I get a puff really easily. I'm going to do this, but I'm not going over the Alps. And as I say, I didn't plan any particular route, but I did have a rough idea in my head, and this is from way back, that I could go across France and then I'll turn right before I get to the Swiss border, and I'll go down through France to the south coast, and I'll join the coast around Marseille or somewhere like that, and walk around the coast and into Italy, because the coast is flat, isn't it? So that was my solution as far as it went to avoid the Alps, until I was still in Scotland, and a cyclist stopped to ask me what I was doing, and this man was Polish, and everybody I'd spoken to before that, I'd always said, yeah, but I'm not going over the Alps. And he was saying, yeah, what are you doing? And I explained my magical solution route. And this man stood in the street and laughed at me. And he said, you do realise that's the Maritime Alps. I think I'd still be walking now if I had gone this route that I had come up with. So after that just put the fear into me, because I was thinking, am I going to have to go over the Alps? I can't do this. I need to go over the Alps. So after that, then I was saying to people, I don't want to go over the Alps, but if if you know someone with a camper van, I don't know when I'm going to be in the Alps, but I could do with someone in a camper van who happens to be on holiday there, and they could take the trailer and take my bags and let me climb a little bit of the Alps, and then they could come and scoop me up and let me sleep in the camper van or sleep beside it, and just it'll take me however long to get over these Alps. So it was a genuine fear after that conversation that I was now being forced with the thought of going over the Alps and trying to come up with a solution. And it was about 1,200 miles before I got to the foot of the Alps and looking at them thinking, I have to go over these. And I never did find the camper van. I just had to do it.
But, you're walking every day. That's fitness. Like, that is fitness.
That's what my friends were saying to me. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You'll be really fit by the time you get to the Alps. And basically crossing the border from Scotland into England is the Kielder Forest. And that was a long 18-mile day that I was forced to do because, again, I still wasn't brave enough for the wild camping. And that was a rolling hills day. It took me forever. And I remember, this was just a day or so after I'd met this man, the fear of the Alps genuinely properly kicked in that day because I think I'm never going to get over these Alps. I can't even do these rolling hills. It took me, I think it was something like 4 hours to do 5 miles on that day because of the hills, because of all, not because I walked slowly, but it was just the stopping that I did because I just stopped and stopped and stopped. And my friends were saying to me, it's okay because by the time you get to the Alps, you'll be really fit. And and that's true. I did get accidentally fitter, but I think it's as much in my head fitness as it is my physical fitness. And in my head fitness still was leaving me with this fear of facing the hills.
How do you handle that fear? I suppose, when your words like, head fitness, whether that's, the mental toughness, the mental resilience, the mental side of it, because like from hearing what you've said, like in my head, I'm thinking, but you're fit, you're walking every day. Like just because you're stopping to take breaks doesn't matter. You still did it. You still did those, 18 miles. You completed those rolling hills. I find this fascinating. So how did you handle the mental side then? Like, were you able to reframe it? Were you able to change your way of thinking?
The answer to that is no. I honestly did not believe that I was going to manage these hills. And it was only 2 days before I was starting to climb the hills that I was starting to come up with real solutions for it. Because the only solution I could think of was somebody with a camper van that was going to rescue me every day. And I was going to do 2 or 3 miles at a time and somehow sort of crawl up these hills. So I don't think for that one fear, the Alps, and it was just a big mental hurdle, it never really went away, to be honest. It bore with me the whole time. Every single person I met on that trip heard about me worrying about the Alps.
But you walked over the Alps though, yes?
Yes, I did. So by the time I had crossed over into France, halfway across France, I picked up one of the Caminos, which is a Via Francigena from Canterbury to Rome. So it's a route that takes you from Canterbury to Rome, but it's a walking route. So a lot of it is, footpaths and over through fields and whatever. So I was really using this route when I joined up with it more for the availability of accommodation and the information that I could have about places to stop and things. So I was now following roughly this Via Francigena. And in the book, it talks about going over the Alps, and it's a 3-day section of the Via Francigena to climb to the top of the Alps, up to the Saint Bernard Pass. And the days is roughly about, I think there's about 10 or 12 miles each day. So it talks about 3 days, and I'm thinking, well, it's going to take me a week because I'm not going to be able to do 10 miles climbing each day. So I'll maybe do 5. And a couple of days before I set out, I was with some family had come to Switzerland, passing by, and we sat and we got the book and we got the map out and tried to work out how I was going to do this. And basically what I did in 3 days, the first day, or the day before the first day, I took the trailer on the train up to the first night accommodation. I had booked a host family up in the first village. So I took the train and took the trailer, left the trailer there and went back down. and walked the first day. The second day, they took the trailer and dropped it off at my next accommodation, and I walked it. And then the third day, I got a taxi company to collect my trailer and take that up to the third accommodation. In the book, it says, don't do this section unless you're fit and healthy and comfortable with doing hill walking and being out in the wild or whatever. And actually, in the book, it does say, there are trains and buses that you can get, and it might be that you opt to take the train for these 3 days. And a lot of people that I met and a lot of people do that, and that was fine for them. But of course, I was doing this for charity, and my stubbornness just wouldn't let me sort of bail out of it. So the book says it will take you about 6 hours to do each day. I think I was at least 10 for each of those 3 days. But I did it. And I've got a video where I just immediately reacted to getting to the top. And I'm so pleased that I got that video because it still gets me now, the joy and the relief and the disbelief that I had made it up this bit that I had thought about for 1,200 miles, worrying about the Alps.
Oh, that's amazing. But I love again, how you problem solve this, take the train up, train back, walk up, the kindness of strangers to take your buggy onto the next place so you could walk it, using a taxi, and then, reaching the top. Please tell me you had good weather and you had good views.
Oh, the weather was glorious. The weather was just amazing. It was maybe a touch too hot for me, but it was better that weather than wild, horrible, wet, horizontal rain that probably most of my walks in Scotland had been. So yes, the weather was very kind to me. One thing that I want to say about those 3 days climbing the Alps and the lessons that I learned about it is back to me saying that I'm too slow and I stop all the time, was learning to go at my pace. And that was the only way that I could do those 3 days, was going at my pace. Within about an hour or so of me setting off on the first day, a lovely young Italian girl sort of met up with me, or sort of keep walking along with her dog, and we chatted, and she said, we can walk together. And I sort of immediately was saying, no, but I walk really slowly. She said, oh, it's okay, I walk slowly too. And it was within a minute or two, I realised that she wasn't putting me under any pressure to keep up with her, but I felt that pressure of, she was walking a bit faster than I would comfortably have chosen to walk. So I had to solve this one, and I wasn't brave enough to say anything. So the first cafe that we got to, after about an hour or so, I ordered a second cup of tea after we'd had, our snack or whatever. And that was so that she would eventually get bored and decide to move on, which thankfully she eventually did. And she just said, oh, I'm going to carry on. And that was fine. She met up with me again on the next day, and I still wasn't brave enough to say, you walk too fast, I can't keep up. So I spent a ridiculous amount of time taking some photos and videos of goats until she got bored and bored waiting and decided to carry on walking. So it was at that point I realised I need to go at my pace. I can't keep up with anybody, no matter how slow they are. Your pace is the right pace. And that was the only pace for me. I could stop as often as I liked, and I could go as slow as I liked, and I wasn't holding anybody up. And again, that's back to, in my head, I don't want to keep anybody back. I don't want to feel under pressure. So that was how I got over the Alps, at my pace.
And tell us about Rome, because I know that you had a very sort of special encounter or special moment. Take us back to, maybe just, being a couple of miles out, a couple of kilometers out from the finish, what was going through your head, and then what happened next.
I remember a conversation with somebody about 3 or 4 weeks before I got to Rome, saying, oh, this is so exciting that you're nearly finished, and this is all, and I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to be nearly finished. So for all that it was exciting that I was getting to Rome, there was a little bit of me actually quite enjoying this new life that I had got myself for the last 5 months of just getting up and going for a walk every day. So that was a bit random, really, that it was almost like I didn't really want to get to Rome because that would mean that this would be over. But obviously, I was really excited about getting to Rome. And, I knew that some of my friends were coming over from the UK to be there at the finish line with me. So that was going to be exciting. And also, a couple of weeks before I got to Rome, I had a message on Facebook Messenger from a random woman and saying that I'm going to be in Italy and I'd like to come down and be at the finish line when you get to the finish line. And I thought, yeah, that's absolutely fine. That's lovely. And I didn't know who this woman was, but I had met up with some people when I was in Switzerland and I had spent some time in Geneva. I made some new friends there, went swimming with them and went for lunch with them. And so I just assumed I could see that this woman had a connection to Geneva. So I thought, oh, she must be one of the women that I met when I was in Geneva. But she didn't have any photographs, so I couldn't quite remember which one she was. Anyway, getting into Rome that final day actually was only I walked in on the Friday and my friends had come over on the Friday so that they would be walking with me for the last 2 or 3 miles to the finish line at St. Peter's Square. So I got to their hotel just 10, 15 minutes before they did on the Friday. And it was kind of funny because they walked around from the train station pulling their big suitcases. I said, well, this is ridiculous. How come you're late when some of us have walked all this way and you just came in a plane? So that was kind of funny. But they were so excited and so, emotional about me nearly at the finish line. And I remember worrying because I thought, why am I not emotional? Why am I not? I was excited to see them and I was excited, but I didn't have the depth of emotion that I would have expected at that point. And it did concern me because I thought, am I just so hard-nosed into this walking malarkey that getting here is just, I've made it to the end. They walked with me that last couple of miles and thankfully one of them was videoing it. And I remember the moment, just as we got to the pillars on the outskirts of St. Peter's Square, all of a sudden, every emotion that you could possibly have just erupted in me, and I was just breaking my heart, and it just came to me just suddenly. And I remember feeling really relieved that, apart from the fact that I'd now got to the end, the emotional, it was a relief to have those emotions, that I wasn't hard-nosed and this was an incredible experience that I'd just been on and I'd made it to the end. And here was St. Peter's Square that I'd seen on photos, I'd seen on videos. I got there and my friends were there to cheer me on at the final finish line. So it was incredible just getting to Rome. Back to the woman that had emailed or messaged me and said that she was going to be there. When she arrived, my friends still laugh now, and I've seen her since, and they said you could see she came running up to me, said, "Oh, congratulations, and I'm so pleased that I got here." And my friend said, it was so obvious at your face that you had no idea who this woman was. And I was panicking, thinking, I've met her, and that's really bad that I've met her and I don't know who she is. It turns out I hadn't met her. She had just followed me on Facebook where she'd seen my photos in Geneva with some of her friends. She used to live in Geneva. She turned into the most incredible, fluent Italian tour guide for us. She'd lived in Rome for a couple of years. She'd worked in Rome, so she had fluent business Italian. And she got us into places that we would never have been able to get into without somebody that knew their way around. She was staying in a hotel that used to be Pope Paul VI's residence way back, and it's now a lovely hotel, and it's got a roof terrace on the top. So she had us up on the afternoon that we arrived. She had 7 of us up on the roof terrace. We called it the Pope's Pub, drinking champagne in the Pope's Pub, having just walked to Rome. And then the next day she said, come back and meet me here. And the Pope does the Angelus on a Sunday afternoon at 12 o'clock. So we were back up in the Pope's Pub on the same level as him across the square, looking down at all the poor souls that were queuing up for hours to get into the square to see the Pope. And we were waving across to him on the same level. So that was incredible, having Ernestine giving us this amazing tour guide for a couple of days in Rome. Then on the Monday, my 94-year-old godfather and some of his family came over and arrived in Rome. My friends had left, and they were arriving, and this was amazing for me because Uncle Desmond was a friend of my dad's from school age, and 94 with dementia. He had followed my trip and had video called me all the way through. Every 2 or 3 weeks, him and Agnes, his daughter, would call me and, "Where are you?" And I would invariably be in my tent, and he would talk about what he'd been to places around there. And I knew that we had tickets for the general audience for him and I to be in the crowd for the Pope's audience on the Wednesday. And it was only when I went to collect the tickets on the Tuesday afternoon that I discovered that I knew I had another ticket by that time, but I thought it was just another ticket for the general audience. It turned out that I was being presented to Pope Francis during the audience mass, or at the audience mass, which was just incredible. And that was my parish priest back in Glasgow and the Archbishop of Glasgow. They had arranged this for me, but I didn't know that they had arranged it. I thought they had just got me another ticket, which I thought was amazing because Uncle Desmond's daughter could come with us. And my panic when unbelievable that I was getting presented to the Pope. But I thought, but I can't leave Uncle Desmond behind. So I asked the guard who was giving me the ticket, I said, but I've got my godfather with me. Can he come with me? And because he was in a wheelchair, he said, yes, he could go with me in a wheelchair. So that was just amazing that I was up at this mass on the Wednesday, Uncle Desmond at my side, and as it turns out, his daughter, because we needed somebody to push the wheelchair. And Uncle Desmond turned to me when he realised that the Pope was just in front of us, really about 10 rows in front of us. He said, "Oh, I'm so privileged that I got to be 94 and I'm here. I've lived long enough to be here. And what would Pat and Agnes say?" Pat and Agnes being my mum and dad. And I just burst into tears at that point. He was in tears, and I said, "But you're here representing Pat and Agnes." It was just such a lovely moment for him to recognise the privilege for all that he's got dementia. He was very switched on. He was very much aware that he was here, and I just loved the fact that he was there representing mum and dad. It was lovely, and the Pope, after the mass, the Pope was then brought around on his wheelchair and brought along row by row to the individuals, and you just watch this, and as you've met the Pope, then the guards are just coming along behind, and people, so the rows are gradually emptying and the chairs are getting taken away. And then Pope Francis was brought around to us, and he gave me a big beaming smile, and he put out his hand, and I just shook his hand, and I don't know if I was supposed to say anything. I don't even know if I thought that I would say anything, but I didn't say anything. Uncle Desmond blessed Pope Francis, and Agnes was the one that remembered to you kiss his ring, and that's probably why he gave me out his hand. But it was a moment in time, but it was an incredible moment in time, and to be able to share it with them as well was just unbelievable. But I'm so pleased that I didn't know about that until that Tuesday afternoon, because all of the previous incredible experiences that I'd had on this trip, with all the kidnapping and the kindness and the people that I'd met, I think I'd constantly be thinking, yeah, but I'm going to meet the Pope. And I didn't know about that. So it was a great surprise, and I was so grateful that it was a surprise and that I even got that experience.
Oh, incredible. And I mean, there's so many things to celebrate. Facing your fears, getting over the Alps, kindness to strangers, reaching Rome, this not random, but this person who's followed your journey, coming out, speaking the language, being an incredible tour guide, having this meeting with Pope Francis, being able to be there with your 94-year-old godfather. What an epic end to the adventure. How was it coming home, heading back to Glasgow to work? Was that quite an adjustment?
It was. I flew home with the McGowans, so I flew home with the family on the Friday. So I was in Rome for about a week, and previous to even booking or putting the date in the diary, I already had a girls' weekend booked for the following weekend. So that was really good, because I came home and I had a week with nothing on and deliberately just let myself vegetate, just to sort of recover or get my head around and just being back home. And then it was good fun to be away for a girls' weekend. I started to work again towards the end of November, but obviously leading up to Christmas, I was just thinking, well, don't do it too much. Just sort of get back into work mode a little bit and build it up after the new year. But the main sort of time that it properly hit me was a couple of weeks before Christmas. I remember just sitting in the living room and thinking, oh, where am I going tomorrow? Where am I walking to? Oh, who am I going to be meeting? And that sort of, I suddenly realised that I was missing the routine, particularly the Italian routine, because that was where you meet a lot of other pilgrims walking to Rome or walking sections to Rome. So I had this couple of months of routine of you're not walking with them, but meeting up with them in the Stellos in the evening and socialising with people and meeting different folk. So a couple of weeks before Christmas is when it hit me that I was missing the routine. But in January, February, by that time I knew I was going to start to give talks about it. So I think the fact that I was then going back and looking through photos and looking through videos and writing the talk, I was reliving it. I really enjoy reliving it. So I don't know or think that I've properly hit the post-adventure blues that people talk about. Maybe that'll still come. Maybe that was what it was when I was missing it before Christmas. But now I'm talking about it, I am really enjoying reliving it. And the memories still keep popping randomly into my head, things that have happened. So I'm lucky, I think, that I haven't had a big down. I'm back working normal, sort of not full time, but my normal routine of working is back in full mode. But yeah, I'm back home and I don't know about people say, oh, you're going to do it again or what's next? And I don't think I could top it. I don't think everything would be compared to that. I'm not saying that I'm not going to go on another walk or whatever, but I don't think I could top that one. That was just so, it was an experience the whole trip. But then that ending was just, how could you finish off with anything like that kind of ending again? It can't be repeated.
And you were also you were raising money for two charities. Would you like to share the two charities that you were raising funds for?
Absolutely. So I talked about mum and dad often on this podcast, and yeah, they were a big factor for me. So this was a massive challenge. So it made sense, obviously, to raise funds for charity and to do it in memory of mum and dad. So mum had vascular dementia, and in 2019, she went into a care home, and I got lots of good help and advice on the phone from Dementia UK about helping her, sort of do my little bit for helping her settle into the care home. So it made sense for me to raise funds for Dementia UK. And the other one in memory of Dad. When I was growing up, Dad was a black Hackney taxi driver in Glasgow, and he would come in each day with a big bag of change from the taxi. And as a child, I would go through this bag of change and fish out all the halfpences and save up the halfpences and send them off to Africa to help the children. So when I was thinking of a charity to think of Dad, Mary's Meals, actually he died a couple of years before Mary's Meals was started, but I knew that was a kind of charity. They started by feeding children at school in Malawi, and so Mary's Meals was the charity that I raised funds for in memory of Dad. I have a Just Giving page, and if you even just search Geraldine McFaul, the two pages come up, one for Dementia UK and one for Mary's Meals. And I'm still, the page is still open. I'm doing the talks and I'm still fundraising for those two charities.
Fantastic. And where can people find more information about you online, Geraldine? Where are you most active on social media?
On Facebook and Instagram. So weirdly enough, it's two different names of the pages, but on Facebook, I am Home to Rome in English, Home to Rome. On Instagram, Jed, GED _ home #2 Rome. So Facebook, Home to Rome, Instagram, Jed _ home #2 Rome.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that I put all of those links in the social media, in the show notes, so that people can find links to charities and find links to yourself as well, so they can find out where your next talks are going to be. But Geraldine, I would love for you to have the final words of advice for other women out there who'd like to take on a challenge, who'd like to step out their comfort zone, who would like to face their own fears. What advice would you have for them? But please don't say, just do it. Any other sort of practical tips or advice?
My advice for other women, if you have this crazy thought come across your head, or if you've got a burning desire to do something, whether it's physical or otherwise, is realizing that you probably can do it. You might need to come up with solutions. I had these two rules and I had to come up with solutions. But the main thing that I learned from doing this trip was doing it at your own pace. And even if you're thinking, well, other people are much faster, other people are much stronger, your pace is the right pace for you, and it's your adventure and your rules. So you can do it. And I've come away from the whole thing realizing that we are much more capable than we think we are. And you're much more capable than you think you are. So, yeah, your pace, and you are able to do it.
Absolutely. Geraldine, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your journey and your incredible walk, 2,000 miles from Glasgow to Rome. Absolutely inspiring.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey tribe, I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Geraldine. What a walk, what a challenge, walking from home to Rome and getting to meet the Pope. Absolutely incredible. Now, everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go and check it out. Today is a very special day. It is the 4th of August, 2024. And that means that the Tough Girl podcast has been going for 9 years. OMG, with new episodes going live every Tuesday and bonus episodes going live every Thursday. And I have been very consistent since I started. I don't think I have ever missed a Tuesday. So that means that there are now over 700 episodes for you to listen to, 700 episodes plus in the back catalogue. So please do go check out the back catalogue. If you go and visit toughgirlchallenges.com, it's the main central hub. There's more information about me, my different adventures and challenges, also the incredible women that I've interviewed throughout the years, as well as information on the Tough Girl blog. There is a resources section with information about the top 10 episodes that we have every year, as well as the top 10 overall episodes. Plus, it's broken down into ultra endurance challenges, swimmers, through hikers, ultra runners, running up to a marathon, climbers, mountaineers, adaptive athletes, wheelchair adventurers, diversity through adventure, marathon dressage, Mount Aconcagua, sailors, world travelers, explorers and expedition leaders, scientists and researchers, fighters, Olympians and pro athletes, cyclists, triathletes. You get it. There are so many incredible episodes to listen to, and I really do thank you so much for listening along. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you'd like to support financially, please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. So we've actually got 4 episodes going live today. One at 7 o'clock with Juliette Denny, one at 11 a.m. Tough Girl Extra with Stephanie Quintrell, one today, this one, which has gone live with Geraldine, and then we've got one at 7 p.m. with Caroline Paul, who is the author of an incredible book called Tough Broad, From Boogie Boarding to Wing Walking, How Outdoor Adventure Improved Our Lives as We Age. Not an episode to miss. It's an absolute cracker, as they all are. Thank you again for listening. I would love for you to tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. That is the best way to get the message out there. That's the best way to encourage other women and girls to listen, to be inspired, to think about their next challenge, their next adventure that they're going to take on. I'd love to hear about what you're up to, what you're training for. Do send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. Please follow me on Instagram at toughgirlchallenges. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.